of 5 people with Ann Torregosa, Juliet Kaplinger, and John Talbot. And then the next thing we need to do, Juliet, is I think you and I need to vote Ann as a voting member since she's an alternate, correct?
I think you can just appoint her.
Okay, I appoint you, Ann, as a voting member for our meeting. The reason for that is she is normally an alternate, but we have been hit with a perfect storm of COVID and late travel with the other members tonight. The next item on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes of our May 4th meeting. And does anyone have any comments about the May 4th meeting minutes?
I don't.
Then a motion to accept?
I'll make that motion.
A second? I will second. All in favor, raise your hand.
I'm gonna abstain because I was
Okay.
not here.
You were not here, that works. It passes 2-0. And then informational exchange, don't know that, I see the chief. Chief, you have any comments, fire chief?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Residents, and I should explain that these are general comments. They're not comments about anything else that's on the agenda. So, again, if you just want to get up and say you like my shirt or not, or anything else that has to do with planning and growth in the town of Durham. Seeing none, are there any non-residents who want to make comments or exchange information? Seeing none, our item number 5 is continuing business. A summary of the May 12th site walk. This is at the Hallowell Road subdivision. I believe the new name is Deer Creek. And if the petitioner wants to step into the room, there we go. And Mr. DeBarge, you've got some notes that you'd like to bring up on the May 12th site walk?
Yes, I did circulate some notes as a starting place, and board members can feel free to add any of their observations. I know, John, you were actually the only one that was on the sidewalk, so let's go to those.
We had other members there. I was the only one who either is not traveling and I don't have
Actually,
COVID.
present on the sidewalk were you, John, Alan Purnton, Wes Grover, and Ron Williams, and met here briefly, then went over to the site. I was there, as well as the code officer, new code officer, Alan Plummer. Representatives for the applicant were Charlie Burnham, Jack Dowdy, and Johnny Schnell. The board explored the area to the east of Dyer Brook, the tributary, and observed that erosion control measures installed by the property owner had failed. The board then crossed the stream on an old logging road crossing to a large clearing on the west side of the brook, and that crossing creates a dam in the stream and does not meet state stream crossing standards. It was put in a long time ago. That cleared area on the far side of the stream contains a large amount of construction equipment and materials from the prior business use that remained in violation of an enforcement action in a court order. Town staff had been given direction by the select board not to process any development permit applications for properties that are in violation of the ordinances, including this application. The staff, my code officer and myself, did follow-up inspections on May 17th and May 19th to verify that the site had been brought into substantial compliance with the court order, and reported that to the select board chairman. And he sent an email supporting the approach that we had taken. And then finally, on the site walk, the planning board walked the perimeter around the open space, saw some of the wetland areas, and then concluded the site walk. So those were my observations.
The only change I make is I think the fire chief was there for part of that. So if you don't mind adding Chief Tripp.
Thank you for that.
Any comments from other members? Good, sorry, Lauren.
It's really helpful to have that summary. Thank you, Al.
I guess the next item is new business. And before we start, what we're doing tonight is what's called a completeness review. So basically what we will determine is whether or not the applicant submitted everything that they are required to submit. We're not going to get into a substantive discussion of whether or not the lots are the right size, or whether the road turns the right direction, or any of that stuff. It's just, there's a checklist of things that they're required to provide, and did they provide it in what is it a quality submission, I guess, for like, and quality doesn't mean that we would vote to approve it, it just means it has all the information that is supposed to or not. And Mr. Thabar, if you would like to do a summary, and Mr. Thabar did a review.
I'd be happy to. So we did receive the application after the site walk for preliminary approval, which is the next step in the subdivision review process. And I had done a kind of an initial completeness review and transmitted my comments to Mr. Burnham, and he submitted a supplemental application addressing some of those points on May 20th. And as I said, the first step in the review process, and you mentioned it as well, John, is that the board looks through the checklists on pages 1 through 3, and if any of that information is not included in the application, then it is an incomplete application, and the board will not start a substantive review of the project. The determination of completeness, if everything is in there, just indicates that the planning board has all of the information that it needs at a minimum to confirm compliance or non-compliance with the standards and criteria of the subdivision regulations. So a determination of completeness does not judge on whether the information is accurate or not, or whether it satisfies the criteria or not. It just says that there's enough information here for the board to make a decision on. And under the ordinance, the board can request additional information, and there's guidance given in the ordinance for what the parameters of those additional information requests would be. Once the board determines that the application is complete, and part of the reason for having the completeness check is not just to make sure the board doesn't waste its time in a review, but also because officially a legal clock starts ticking. The date that the board determines that it's complete, it has 60 calendar days to complete its review, hold a public hearing, and make a decision on the application. And the board can either decide to approve it, it can approve it with conditions, which is about 99% of the time, and then it can also deny the application if it fails to meet any of the subdivision standards and criteria. I did provide for the board's review a draft letter of incompleteness, and in that incompleteness draft, I pointed to 2 items that I identified. The first is a location map, which shows the context of this subdivision with surrounding subdivisions and properties, as well as its location within the town. That's a pretty easy thing to fix. It could be put right onto the site plan. And if you look at subdivision plans, you see those all the time. The bigger issue is the fact that the soil tests for each of the test pits of the lots was not included, and the packet indicated it will be forthcoming. And that is a critical piece of information because the subdivision regulations and the checklist require that every lot have a soil test that passes the main plumbing code for a septic system without using easements on other lots or variances of the main plumbing rules. So that was the only substantive piece of information that I found lacking, but again, you board members have had opportunity to review the packet and information, and I welcome any points that you might have picked up that I missed.
Okay, and before, somewhat remiss, I should have started with this. There is no, we do not do public comments or public hearing at this point. So what would happen is this is a discussion amongst the board, whether or not the stuff that is supposed to be there is there, or more information is needed for the next hearing. If, or when we get the full and complete packet, then we go into the preliminary plan review, and at that point, there will be a public meeting and an opportunity for people to speak pro, against, or ask questions to the board about information, or more information if it is needed. So While there's not an opportunity tonight, will be an opportunity in the future. And I will also commend everybody that, Mr. Thabarge is a planner for the town and a great source of information. If you have any questions about the information that the applicant has provided, he can help answer that. I strongly urge the applicant and the residents who are interested, if you have some questions or you'd like to see something, make yourself available to talk about, how this impacts my lot or how it impacts traffic or whatever it may be. And then finally, and I've been guilty of this, and Mr. Thabarge has reminded me that the planning board is a little bit like a jury. And once the trial starts, no one is allowed to talk to outside the meeting to members of the planning board, whether it be the applicant, homeowners, whatever. But if you have a specific question, please address it to George. And he's very good at email or call him or whatever it may be. He's very good at disseminating your questions or concerns to us, and we will take them into consideration at the appropriate time, along with the public hearing.
Just to clarify, you said also to me, but I've already, if they reach out to me, I can still talk to them. It's more of a planning board.
I'm sorry,
to a
it's
butters
just
thing. Yes.
the
Yep.
members of the planning board. Yeah, and I strongly encourage you to
Yeah.
reach out to the applicant and keep that dialogue going.
Yep.
Can I ask a point of clarification? So in the past, I've come to public hearings and public comments. So when you say it'll be open to the public, is it a give and take, or is it just you hear what we have to say and then you shut us down and say, we'll discuss it among ourselves and?
The latter,
and go-
the latter, yeah. It's
So
not,
really, the public doesn't really have a say. All they get to do is state their opinion. They don't get to ask questions and have feedback.
that is correct. So, that's why it's, the more you can do outside of the public hearing venue, the better. If you have a
Well,
question,
they're not allowed to talk to anybody.
No, you can talk to me.
well, if you have a
Hey,
question,
if they have some, like, I talked to the HOA president
Yeah.
today for.
well, let me rephrase that. You can ask a question in the public hearing and say, are they gonna put a fence there, or are they, whatever it may be, ask the president, and then we will address it. Did I misspeak, George?
No, I just wanted to clarify, I think something that might be helpful is that in the letter that went out, I think you sent a letter to all of the abutters, it did indicate that any comments or questions by email in advance of the meeting will really help the process of getting information. Coming into the meeting and asking a bunch of questions is difficult to try to answer on the spot, because sometimes it takes some digging. And so it just would be very helpful if people do have questions to send them. And my email is right on the website. So if you would transfer those questions to me, hopefully I could get you the information before the meeting and just make it more productive.
Or we will address it at the meeting if not, so.
If it is relevant to the
Yeah,
review discussion. Yeah.
Exactly. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm not in a butter, I'm just a concerned
You,
person in town.
you can do that, you
The
can,
website's there for everybody.
yep, it is. But, well, this is probably as good a time as any to say that the plan, it's not about growth in general or whatever it may be. When this meeting is about a specific Deer Creek process or project, so.
So I just need, I want to make sure I'm doing this right, not being too experienced in, whatever. My name's Alan, and I'm the butter, I'm the president of the Timber Oak Association, and we have a vested interest in what's going on beside us and behind us. If I want to talk with Charlie or John or John's partner or other people involved in this, it's not okay?
It is okay. The only people you cannot talk to are members of the planning board.
Well, I wouldn't want to do that. I mean,
You're not the only one who doesn't want to talk to me, so.
No, I'm just thinking, maybe I'm old-fashioned or something, but I believe in, if someone tells me something, I believe it.
Yeah, we're not allowed to talk to you, about this project in particular, we're not allowed to have private discussions. And George has a very fancy Latin name of name for it, which is ex parte, so,
That's Ian's word.
oh, that's a legal term. Yeah, no, I strongly encourage you to talk to either George or the petitioner.
Thanks.
Okay, so having opened that can of worms, I will turn to the board and see if either member have any additional concerns, additional information that we would like to have that's not in the package. Again, not the whether you agree with what's in there, just the fact that they submitted what's on the checklist.
Are we gonna go through the checklist quickly here, or are we,
It's up to you, we could do that.
I mean, typically we do, but
We can if you know. if
it's
you wanna-
more time, but, you know, it's more thorough that way, too, at the same time. I mean, I've got a list of stuff, I wasn't sure if we were gonna go through it.
Sure.
Typically we do, I'm just,
It
what do we think?
it won't take long, it's not like it's the first 3 pages, and we could just deal with it topically.
Yeah, so we're talking page 36.
Just trying to go through your checklist, George, is what the checklist you prepared.
It's actually in the application, filled out by the applicant.
Yep.
Right after the fee schedule? It's the paperwork that I passed to Ann, I think is what we're referring to. And then George's analysis is on that as well.
And can I actually ask a process question real quick?
Sure.
The required submissions for which a waiver can be granted, yes, those may not be required at this time, but are we making the decision whether those will be required? We have 60 days. If we approve this thing today, they have 60 days,
There's 60
right?
days.
So it's in their best interest to know what we're going to require, right?
At the final stage? I mean, I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstand.
Okay, so
I don't
if you're
understand.
referring to things like the hydrogeological study, okay, so my recommendation is that you wait until you do your substantive review. Hear testimony from interested parties, from the applicant, and then the board should make a majority decision, because there's time and money involved in those extensive studies.
Yeah.
And there's traffic, there's hydrogeological, there's like, mainly traffic and the high-intensity soil survey. So those are typically you would not do that for a completeness review, because theoretically, the other stuff you have to have.
Okay.
This stuff is optional.
What's the days, is it 60 days from now?
60 calendar days from the day that you make a determination of completeness. So if you made a determination of completeness tonight, the clock starts tomorrow.
So that's what I'm just saying, it's 2
Yeah,
months.
but we don't have the test bit, so I'm not anticipating
Okay.
completeness tonight. I mean, if that's something you guys are willing to put a contingency on or condition of, I mean,
We'll
he
see.
called me
All right.
today, this afternoon, saying he's getting out there this week, so
Okay. All right, thank you.
it's his phone.
You want me to just walk you down through the things that are required?
That sounds good.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll try to do it quickly. 6.7A is the application form, which is in your packet. The location map with the required information is not on any of the plans. There is a location map, but it doesn't provide the information that's specified in 6.7B. The scale of the plan is readable. The proposed subdivision name, town and map lot number, that was one of the things I pointed out to the applicant, and he's added the map and lot number so that we can keep track of the subdivision filing. Their legal rights to develop included a purchase and sale agreement.
Can I ask a question there real quick?
Yeah,
The easements are, what am I saying here? Easements, restrictions, is that included in there? Was there?
that's a separate that's a separate issue.
Like existing ones
Yes.
might
I'm
be,
sorry.
but HOA stuff, I think is what you're referencing.
I'm not talking
Yeah,
HOA.
so you're talking existing.
Existing,
But again, they've provided a document, and whether or not it is adequate or not, in terms of it meets the standard, that's something we can discuss when we get to the substantive review of the project.
that will be in a future
And,
meeting.
for example, I know there's some questions on the surveying. If you look at the survey plan, there are a bunch of questions about title, whether, certain parts of this are under a cloud of title. That's a substantive issue, but they have provided a certified boundary survey. So that item is complete at this point. for
I guess I'm
review.
referring to this, it
Mhm.
says, copy of all deed restrictions, easements, right-of-ways, other encumbrances currently affecting the property. So that is just what I'm talking, just making sure, I'm just questioning. I saw the
Right.
deed,
Yep.
but if there was any, it would be in there.
Sure.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know whatever like that. You're talking about the ruling or whatever that was put on it. I don't know if that was a
No,
legal
you're,
thing.
you're
No,
talking
no,
about.
no, no.
You're talking about
she's asking,
easements, sure.
Were there easements that
Sure.
were not
Yeah.
included?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
And the survey plan should note that, so if you see anything there, when we review it.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, so, list of proposed deed restrictions, there is a document in your, packet that includes a proposed, bylaws and covenants. All septic system soil tests with logs with the map on the lots. The logs are on the map, but we don't have the logs, as we discussed earlier. The proposed water supplies for domestic and firefighting purposes, there is a note on the plan that says that fire protection will be provided by sprinklers. That'll be an issue that we'll discuss. Well, exclusion zones are shown. Those are areas where you can't put a well that's within 100 feet of the septic system. The names, owners, and applicant, preparers, and abutters, and I know there's questions about, are the abutters' names all accurate? They go by what the tax rolls say, and some of the properties may have changed names since then. They did have provided wetland mapping as well as topography, C11. There are no farmland soils, C12. The number of acres, location of existing property lines, and site features are on the plans. There is an existing conditions plan that shows a lot of that information. Water features are located on there. It's not in the watershed of Runaround Pond. The zoning district boundaries are there.
George, real
Yeah.
quick. So water features, those are required for within the property, but also adjacent properties, right?
Let me see, location of any water, an indication of location in or out. Again, what we can do when they do have water features on here, whether they're adequate enough to meet the requirements or not, is a judgment that you can make.
Yeah, just whether it's complete or not. So we're showing them in the project boundary, but not outside. But in the ordinance, it says location of all rivers, streams, brooks within or adjacent to the proposed subdivision. So just, is that complete or is it not complete? Just because we stopped the river or the stream, for example, at the project boundary.
You know, it's tough. It's not actually a USGS stream. You know, it's not as light. Like, so we do. That's more part of the wetland survey. What those lines are showing are like what are the features that we have to account for. But as far as like registered and recorded and bona fide stream features, there aren't. They start down below, and
So there's none like adjacent to the property.
it's
or
not a
something?
USGS certified. So I don't know what the threshold is there. You know, like are we supposed to go and map out every puddle within 100 feet of the place, or do you? I guess that's a gray area. So
That line generally continues off the,
Sure.
whichever direction.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
going.
And then that site plan versus other plans, I do think maybe the existing conditions plan shows more of the topology there.
And if you get to like the post and pre-developed subcatchments, that shows every feature within. Like that, the last 2 pages are brought way out.
Okay. I mean, stream is defined in our ordinance.
I think those streams would be water features, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then they would continue out.
Yes. And then the other plans show the streams as far as
Outside the project?
yeah, they
boundary?
show. If you look at like the stormwater. Yeah, I guess I'd.
But the other plans show it.
Yeah, they show the contours in the watershed for as far as everything draining through to us.
The existing stormwater plan?
Sure.
Yeah, it shows the contour.
And then it should have time for concentration and reaches drawn in there, but
Within the project.
I guess I don't know what to call those streams. I mean,
Yeah, actually, you do have them on that one.
yeah,
So on the stormwater
yeah.
existing,
Uh-huh.
they do continue out a little bit. All
Do
right.
they have depth?
Contours.
The depth of the stream?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not weather required So it's just location.
That's a good question though, but.
For the Culvert Crossing, I included that in the NERPA application, I guess, and that's part of your package, I believe.
That's actually what I was referring to, actually, the culvert
Yep.
itself, when we get to it.
So I'm good with that then, I didn't,
You okay?
I think if you guys are shown here.
Okay, I mentioned zoning district boundaries, and the location with size of existing and proposed culverts and drainage ways are shown. The,
Hold on, George, on that one, same
Sure.
thing, are they shown on this culvert locations outside as well?
I don't know, I didn't put any, no, I didn't include outside culverts, like down the street or
I think it's,
anything outside off of our property.
so again, location, size of existing and proposed culverts and drainage ways on or adjacent to the property to be subdivided. So I think the concern is if there's any impacts,
Sure,
what's it gonna look like
sure.
downstream to
Sure.
those culverts? So we might want.
So- again, I think when we get into the substantive review of the issues, there'll be information like that. So for example, what are the downstream, like at Hollowell Road? What's the culvert that's there? So as you go forward, if specific issues come up on drainage or any other thing, soils, then the board can get additional information if it needs it.
Yeah, I'm just talking about base.
Yep, I do
It's
understand.
saying location of them.
Yep.
Is the base, just where are they? That's
Yep.
it, not talking about any sort of
Yep.
substantive.
And you make a decision on whether it's complete or not,
Okay.
based on your judgment. Okay,
Okay, are we gonna keep going?
yeah.
Okay.
Traffic entrance, one of the points that I brought up in my initial review was that the original submission did not have site distances for the entrance on Hollowell Road. They've since added those. The location and width of existing and proposed streets. The proposed lot lines with dimensions and areas. The proposed common open spaces, if any, there is significant proposed open space here. The proposed building envelopes and cleared areas, the supplemental packet that was provided on Friday after the submission deadline is the one that's on the board there, and I think, Charlie, the green represents areas that would be cleared on each lot.
Yep, it's a little conservative, I don't think I went over 14,000 or 15,000 on any of those.
And
I think I
then
went up to 20.
any areas flood prone based on the FEMA maps, and I believe based on the panel that was submitted as part of your application, the FEMA floodplain does extend up the channel of this branch of Dyer Brook through Hidden Oak subdivision and up.
The floodplain isn't part of isn't in there, or is there new data? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Because
in your
last time I
packet,
thought-
there's a panel from the FEMA flood map.
I thought we discussed this before and there wasn't,
Um,
didn't we go over this? And I thought there was, oh, I see it.
You see it? Yeah, so if you look way down in the corner, you'll see the little extension of Dyer Brook across Hollowell Road.
Mhm.
And the floodplain carries up through. The other small channel on the other end of the property is not in the floodplain, based on the FEMA flood maps. So that is the checklist item. And then any state identified significant habitats or unique natural areas. The town's comprehensive plan inventories of natural resources didn't show anything. And I believe there's a letter in your packet from the Maine Natural Areas Program that says they haven't identified any. And then finally, as part of the review process, they will be checking with the Maine Historic Preservation Commission to see if there are any resources in this area, but there are none that we're aware of at this point. So those are the items that are mandatory for a completeness package based on the checklist.
Okay. I've got a couple questions. So the boundary survey, this wasn't done for the project, was it? It was like something canned, right?
It was, yeah, whenever Dean had it done, the
Okay.
previous owner had a survey done.
Are the corners marked, or whatever it's called?
Pinned?
Pinned, staked, yeah.
They will have to be by the end of this. I think I've marked them as pinned, but whatever's there, we didn't go and repin anything.
So again, just number 3, corners of the parcel shall be located on the ground and marked by monuments. Do we require that?
It's in the ordinance.
Okay. Um,
But as a discussion point, I mean, the question is, they've submitted a survey, I'm just making sure I understand. So for the completions thing,
That's
it's checked,
correct.
but going
Again,
forward and we
Yeah,
get the discussion,
it's
those kinds of things.
it's a
will come.
line, but I think John is correct in that if there are questions on the survey, that's something we would do get into the substantive review.
okay, that's cool.
Yep.
But I appreciate like all of that now, right?
That's what I mean,
I
that's
like
what I
that.
would
No,
think you would
thank you.
appreciate.
Yeah, yes, I do.
Talking about that,
Yeah,
okay.
please. Yep.
So there's that, and also the farmland, why is that not applicable? Farmland soils in the checklist, did I miss that?
It's not being farmed, right?
Well, I
Is it-
know
Well,
it's
it's
not
not just farmed, it's if it has farmland soils, the state requires that you map it. Doesn't say you do anything with it. State just
No, I
says you
know.
have to map it.
No, I know, but farmlands and farm soils, is there just non?
Yeah, it was all sands as far as our soil survey showed.
Okay, all right. I see, that's why you said not applicable, because there wasn't any.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Vegetative cover, I know you mentioned that you're showing how many trees are being cut, but I wonder if what this is, the ordinance is showing, where is it forested? Like showing?
Yes, and that would be included in the existing conditions, Hydrocad report. It goes over the ground coverage of the subcatchments and how much of it's impervious, how much of it's forested, what type of soils it is. So if you feel like reading that 180-page report, it's the worst.
Okay, you can also add it as a layer to one of these things.
Sure, like put on the soils, but the soils map is included.
Yep.
Yeah, but that obviously doesn't include forested. It's just more of a.
So one point that I think Juliet raises is the fact that you're showing on your plan, the green are areas that are gonna be cleared. Aren't those areas already cleared on
Right.
some of those lots?
Right, like mapping out every existing, because
Can
it's
you
so
show-
scarcely forested up
Can
there.
you
Is that
show
what you're
the
getting at?
area that's cleared right now, up there?
Yeah. You talking about the laydown yard?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much this whole.
So that's all cleared right now.
Actually, not the road yet. The existing road comes in here. Our road sweeps off it, so it's actually more like just these two lots here.
Okay.
So it's just something to think about, I guess.
And the rest of it is all forested?
Besides those logging roads and various openings that were. Like, yeah, it is rather scarcely forested for sure. The perimeters, the areas that we've kept green are the more densely forested, but the lots themselves don't anticipate a whole lot of tree
And
killing.
your submission indicates that liquidation harvesting did occur,
Yeah.
and that
I can get a letter from him.
under the ordinance, there's a requirement that they submit a letter from a licensed forester currently determining whether it was done in compliance with state harvesting laws or not.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the last thing I had was the site distances. So George, you mentioned it was included. Where is it included?
C101. Just right at the end of the road, there's two little arrows that say site distance this direction, site distance that direction. And
It
I
says
just mapped
700
that.
feet in either
Yeah, I
direction.
think it's.
Oh, okay.
I think you got a good quarter mile. But
One of the issues we'll be discussing is the offset of Patriot Drive across the street.
and I'll probably add some photos to help support that. I think that'd be good.
Then you've got a letter from Maine Dot that, where you'll have, they'll okay your road cut.
Yeah. Look, it's an existing road cut,
Okay.
and we actually don't need a DOT permit because we don't trigger any trip limits.
Okay.
So I think the street issue is more just getting the road name approved, as far as I can understand.
That's something we can look in with the road commissioner.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, where is the site distance located? I can't.
Do you have the newest one? Do you have
Yeah,
a map
it's
that
right
looks like
here.
that? Here,
Yeah.
right here.
Oh, okay.
So if you don't have the green one, then
Oh,
does.
I'm looking at the wrong one.
It's
Yeah,
in that
sorry.
supplement.
sorry.
I see it, thank you.
And how do we know that you're not gonna trigger the trip limit?
Because it's 13 residential lots. Usually to hit that, you gotta be up above 100 something peak hour trips.
And that's gonna be written down somewhere that you're underneath the.
Yep.
We don't need it for this, but.
Yep.
And also, we've talked about this before, but the wetland delineation, I'm going to recommend, just me, to talk to the board on another one be done, or at least bring a third party in to review it, just because it was completed in January.
Did go out.
I know, but was it January of this year or last year?
This year.
Okay, yeah, but it was, the delineation was done in the winter.
It was-
Yes, he GPS'd it.
Well, no, because there was actually areas off the whole back side of it. Like he only delineated around the streams in January, and he went back into that whole back corner. It ended up, if you looked at I don't know if I actually had submitted a sketch plan at that point yet, but that back property that Dean wanted to keep got cut in half because we lost half the left side due to the wetlands.
And we kind of get into the discussion about what's the information,
Sure.
whether it's good enough
Sure.
down the road.
But
Yeah.
I'm just bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
The
warning too.
report indicates there were pictures in there from March 9th.
It's still the winter.
Yep.
Oh, I did have one other question. Fees and all of that, the escrow,
Those have been paid.
those are, all okay. So that would be used for the third party if we wanted,
Yes.
okay. Thank you.
And something Ann, did you, I'm sorry.
Mm-mm.
And the other issue that's come up is, and I think I saw that, but the school wells and the aquifer protection and
I think
all that stuff.
I included her note, superintendent, that she did respond and said, I have no problem with what you're doing. So
And you show the boundaries of
Yeah.
those protection
I
areas.
sent her the package.
I think I saw them.
I think I sent her the whole site plan.
Good.
Yep.
Juliet, did you have anything else in
That was
terms
it.
of completion?
Well, that was it.
Did you have any questions on what?
I guess, would you feel more comfortable if I had Alex go out now and just do another walk and reconfirm and? want
I
somebody
think
else to
let's
do-
wait. Let's
Okay.
wait to talk and
Okay.
see what we wanna do, whether it's
I just
gonna
want
be.
to get ahead of it. If I gotta let him know or somebody know.
Yeah, I don't know whether it will be a decision to have you hire someone to do it, or if it'll be a third party, which will be
Sure.
us
Sure.
hiring someone.
But if I could get you more comfortable.
If the board decides to have a peer review done, then they might point out things that should be investigated.
Right.
So it might be better to just wait.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So,
And just as we're kind of starting to do peer reviews more, we do have a budget,
Yep.
for peer, that's not extremely big.
Yep.
So,
Right.
well, that's what the escrow's for.
Right.
Right? What they pay
will
in.
that cover,
It's just not a lot.
No.
Well, it is not,
we can bill you
You'll
more.
you'll burn
later.
through that.
that's right. Well, not necessarily. It
Yeah,
all
it
depends on
depends.
how well the plans have been prepared.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, did you have any other questions about completion?
Survey.
Anything we discussed here?
I've spoken with the fire chief about getting that reduced down to 0. I think he's okay as long as I think the note I have on there, I gotta check the wording.
Well, we can have that discussion next time.
Yeah.
I've got a very narrow agenda here.
I know, I'm trying to squeeze everything I can.
For a
out
couple
of
of
you.
reasons. One is this not a public hearing meeting. We're missing, several,
Totally.
not that the two people who are here are not good, but, we'll go into a lot of that stuff again down the road
Yeah.
when we have more people. Mr. DeBarge, did you have anything that we may have missed?
No, as I indicated, there's a draft letter of incompleteness and a draft letter of completeness for your consideration in the packet.
From my perspective, I think there are missing those two top items that he mentioned. One is the soil logs, and the other one is minor, is probably waiverable, the location map. But I'm comfortable with recommending incomplete and then with getting the rest of the information in down the road. I would also throw out there for the board's consideration that, an idea that I have to kind of keep this process moving to some kind of decision is that if the petitioner can get the soil logs and what else is missing in before the next submission deadline, so they can be reviewed by the staff and be available for us, that at that point, because we have to schedule a public hearing. And my thought would be to do the public hearing at the first preliminary plan meeting, so that we get the residents' input, and the petitioner can respond to that in time. So my thought would be, I'm not sure, I think June 15th, give or take, is the next submission deadline. If the petitioner can get the missing information in by that point, we would go ahead and schedule the public hearing for the July meeting. I guess we're up to July already. I think July 6th. But if it's not in, there is no public hearing.
He's told me he's getting it to me by the end of the week.
Okay. The sooner the better, but if it's not, if we don't have it
would have
on,
been sweet.
if we don't have it on the deadline date, we
Yeah.
don't file the
Yeah.
public hearing
Yep.
information.
Yep.
So that's my thought.
Juliet, did you have other items that you think need to be in that incompleteness letter?
Yes, and I was
Okay.
gonna, after John was done. That's
I'm
what-
done.
Yeah, I think we should be a little more formal as far as listing out what is incomplete, maybe, because we
Okay.
have to fill in that letter, right? So yes, what George said, but I don't think that we can waive the item that George listed. I think you said, John, it might be waivable. I don't think we can waive that.
He's saying the
piece.
site location. He's
Right.
saying,
I-
right.
So,
I'm gonna fix it.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just wanna make
Yeah,
that
that's a good.
clear.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be part of the non-completion.
Right.
He's saying if that was all that was there, he might consider moving
Yes.
on, but I think we broke that with the TPs.
Thank
So
you for
yeah, so
interpreting.
the things, I mean, I'll list the things that I think we should include in there. So the monuments of the corners of the property for the survey. Showing vegetative cover, which I'm not talking every single tree, but kind of like George was pointing out.
I'm gonna
what
put an
is-
aerial behind it.
Well, or like what has been cleared, you just showed a little bit of what's already
Sure.
cleared and what's pretty much forested.
Yeah.
That would be, I think, okay.
I'll put that on the existing plans condition. I'll fly it and I'll put a new aerial behind so you can see exactly what it's like now underneath the existing conditions plan.
Okay, cool. Location of all of the culverts. So you've got the streams on the stormwater plan. Maybe on that same plan showing where the culverts are located along
Yep.
those streams that are outside the property.
Well, let's define outside right away, so that we're,
Well, so I would just say if you guys want to look at stormwater plan, existing, D100, I would say he's got it pretty well.
Does that carry it down to Hollowell Road?
I don't know if it does. And I guess the hard part there, Juliet, is that the whole intent of these stormwater plans is to make it so that what I have coming out of that spot right there is no different than what's currently going out there. So how far downstream you carry out an analysis is kinda, if at AP3,
well, I think we're talking the location of, not the design of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's your responsibility to make sure that they downstream can handle it.
yeah.
But I mean, at some point in time, we need to say, where do we
This is where
draw
it
a
is.
line to say, if it's the culvert under Hallowell, or
Yeah.
which
There
What you
is
said
nothing there
is
now.
there?
Yeah.
But that's a good point. So it ends right there on the road.
That's the start. Yep.
So is it just, that's where it starts or
Yeah.
something?
That is so flat in there.
Oh, okay.
And everything. And I've been talking to Alan. I'm actually going to probably tweak that and send everything from ours down to the stream rather than letting it follow its existing. There's some drainage problems there that are existing, which is you get into some wishy-washy space there. If there's an existing problem, is that our job to fix per se? But I think this is an easy solution where I just tip that road the other way for a bit.
So everything is flowing this way,
Opposite.
this way?
Yep.
Gotcha, right, to the wetland, okay.
Yep.
So yeah, George, it stops here, I guess.
On the road, but the stream
Comes down through that
and the
corner.
major drainage from this area goes down to Hollowell Road.
Sure.
Where Dyer Brook crosses.
To your point, that if I extended that stream all the way to the termination point or to Hollowell Road.
There must be a stream crossing
Yeah,
culvert
there must
under
be.
Hollowell Road. That would be the
Crossing.
point, and what's
Okay.
the size of that?
All of
Because
that one in. Yep.
this project is designed for the 25-year storm.
Yep.
But 100-year storms, what happens at that culvert under, because there is gonna be an increase for a 100-year storm.
And we'll get into those details
Yep.
at preliminary and final plan. I mean, whether,
But the point here is, should that
Should.
culvert be shown?
yeah,
Yes.
show the culvert, yes.
Sure. Yep.
So I'm gonna add Hollowell Road
Is the culvert.
culvert.
Yep.
I think that's pretty much what I had. Let me just make sure. Oh, flood areas. Are we showing that on something? I thought we had talked about this and none of it was on.
So there is a Fema flood map, and they could add the flood area on that stream on these maps, just to show where it is. It's a contour going up through there, I'm sure.
Yeah, like, I think most of our lots are 15 feet above the bottom of that stream. But yes, I will certainly do that.
Did you say there are no current easements or encumbrances on the property currently?
I can only tell you to the best of my knowledge, Ann.
Okay. And that's a no.
How do you find that out? Title search?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Have you
So
done a
none of
title
that, None of
search?
that got flagged in their title search, no.
Okay. See, yeah, that's the question I had. I didn't see any in there, so should we
Yeah.
assume there aren't any?
And I don't know if any of the town's legal actions resulted in one of those. That may be, but
It
that's
still
all-
would have hit the,
It still would have
it hit the title
You
search.
would have thought.
If it was on the, it should have hit the title
The
search.
surveyor should have picked those up.
Yeah, the title search would have it.
Sometimes the surveyors, it depends.
Yep.
Sometimes they'll get into that, sometimes.
Okay, so what I have was
Alta
the two
standard
items.
is it, Alta standard is it has, that kind of stuff has to be on there.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see the Alta, right? We were,
Was a satisfaction of judgment filed on that litigation?
I understood two of those words.
I know they reached agreement. Whether the court has acted on it yet, I don't know.
so George, you were gonna list out what you got?
So we should probably look for that.
I mean, if a satisfaction of judgment hasn't been filed, it's technically an encumbrance. I think we're all aware of it, but
Okay.
Yeah, what would I include for that? Just the rule, the town's letter to them saying this is.
I mean, it would, because I think the judgment, was the judgment filed in the registry? I don't know enough about the litigation. If the judgment was filed, or some notice of the judgment was filed in the registry, then the satisfaction of that judgment should also be filed in the registry. Otherwise, it's still an encumbrance on the property.
Do you have the title report with you, or available?
I'm sure.
You might just answer that
Title
question.
search for him?
It should be on,
Yeah.
on there or
Yep.
off and explain, so.
Yeah, right.
But it's so new too.
It's so new.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so I've got this list. In addition to the two that are in the draft letter, we would add survey monumentation, existing vegetative cover, all adjacent culverts on streams, including Hollowell Brook culvert.
Up to Hollowell.
Add the flood boundary within the, on the project maps, and then clarification of the satisfaction of judgment on the court action.
Plus the two that you had.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Be the TP logs and the updated. And essentially all I gotta do is add the subdivisions to the site location, the existing ones, within 500 feet or something like that. I'll take a look.
Yeah, I'm good with that. You need to make a motion?
I think we do. Did you ready to do it with all of the listing, the list?
What he said.
Just as listed.
Yeah.
As George
George
just
listed.
listed.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah, I'll make that motion to accept all of the,
To determine
to determine
incomplete,
incomplete based on the list George just spelled out.
the board spelled out.
Right.
I'm just a
In
scribe.
George's voice, yeah.
As George summarized.
Yeah.
George summarized.
I will second that.
Okay, all in favor? It passes. And then for the board, my thought about if the petitioner can get all of this information in by the deadline, by the deadline, not
Absolutely.
by the next meeting.
Yep.
Are we good with going ahead and advertising the public hearing and then moving forward with the preliminary plan? which would be July 6th, I think. And I know that because it's 3 days before my daughter's wedding. Everything is either X number of days before
you're gonna
or
be here?
after my wife's.
You can be here?
I'd like to be here up until about 2 hours before the wedding.
Oh,
Seriously.
That hopefully was not.
we are being recorded.
Strike that.
Can we talk briefly about the process? Because
Sure.
George, you sent a little, a note about who can participate and who can't. I only participate in the completeness review. So my understanding is that the other two, Wes and Ron
And Alan.
and Alan, the other three, right, can participate in the substantive review. Is that correct?
George, you talked to the town attorney, so I don't want to put words in the effect, but this, if they miss substantive, that's a problem, discussions, which we've avoided this evening. We can, and they bring themselves up into the discussion here by watching the tape and all that other stuff. We can then, those three can vote on the
From
meeting.
here forward, I think, at the point you determine a complete application, if a board member misses any meeting where this is discussed, then you should, as a board, discuss whether or not you want to waive the rules to allow them to participate.
Okay, so what you're saying then is that they can participate in the preliminary going forward.
Yeah, because we still
As
don't have
we-
a completed application.
I gotcha. But missing this meeting does not preclude them from participating in the future.
This was a non-meeting, never happened.
No, it happened.
No,
You got a
exactly.
decision.
And
Does that answer your question then?
it does,
Okay.
thank you. So the only question I have, I don't conceptually have a problem with it, with determining completeness and then holding the public hearing immediately afterwards, as long as it's adequately noticed. At that time, the board is also gonna decide whether to do a second site walk. And we usually do that before the public hearing.
I had not planned or thought about the second site walk.
Because it's a cluster, we have the site walk in there twice at the sketch plan phase, which you did, and then there's an optional second one after completeness. And we usually have that site walk before public hearing. And that's my only concern about scheduling the completeness, final completeness and the public hearing on the same night.
Is optional at our option whether we do it or not.
It seems
Let's think
to be.
about it, like, logically here. What is the site visit? We just had one. What is the site visit gonna do? What are we trying to get out? We're gonna have it for sure, but when do we have it? Do we want more material in first, before we do the site walk? You know, or
What more?
do we wanna talk about what else we're gonna require potentially? Like what we're not gonna waive or what we are gonna waive before we go out and look again? Or, I'm just trying to think timing wise, when it would make more sense.
Yeah, I'm not quite sold on the need for the second one. But does it have to be, again, if it's optional, but should it be, like what you're saying is, after the first preliminary plan meeting, public hearing, so you'd have a public hearing and meeting on July 6th, and then, I guess if it was a perfect submission at that point, or not, we'd vote yes or no at that point.
So just a reminder, there's a 60-day clock that starts ticking when you determine that it's complete, so.
But
And
we're still in the prelim phase at
yeah,
that
so
point.
theoretically, there'll be 2 meetings if you make that determination at the next meeting. I'm assuming the clock will start then, so you'll have at least 1 meeting from there. So theoretically, you could get a 3rd meeting in if you needed it within the 60-day time frame. You might have to schedule a special meeting to do it, or not. So just keep in mind, and part of the thinking to have the public hearing at the next meeting, notwithstanding the discussion that you're currently having about site walk before or after, the idea would be have your public hearing at the next meeting, if it's complete, and then you can process that public input before you get to the meeting where you're gonna be making a decision. It's gonna be very difficult to hold a public, like say you didn't have the public hearing next time, and you have the same night as the time limit on your review process, trying to do that all in one night, public hearing, and go through your substantive deliberations to come to a decision, that will be brutal.
Yeah. And again, we're still in prelim phase. It's 60 days for prelim, then after that is
Correct.
final.
That is
just to
correct.
make
After
sure.
you voted complaints, you're not even, that clock hasn't started.
And if there, and it can be extended by mutual agreement with the applicant to go beyond the 60 days.
My vote is, yeah, public hearing next time, and then maybe hold off on the site walk until after that.
We just do it fast enough, I'm talking out loud, do it fast enough, so it
You
can't
could
be
do
the
what, you could
seventh.
do the site walk in between the two
Yeah,
meetings.
exactly.
Right. If it's found to be complete, right? We still need to,
That's, yeah, that's right.
public hearing is kind of dependent on that point.
Well, and the timing, what that does is if you don't have it in on the submission date, we don't have to commit to a public hearing or.
We won't do a public
We
hearing.
won't,
We won't advertise.
won't
for it.
have one, and we don't have to do it until the week after that
Yep.
submission date, so I go back to,
Yep.
you know, on no later than, because obviously the sooner gives it, George is doing a great job, but he's limited in hours, and,
Yep.
and there are two other committees that, as well as everybody else's time. So I'm fine with that idea, if you're all comfortable with scheduling the public hearing for the July meeting, schedule a site walk at the July meeting,
If
No.
necessary.
if necessary, and if, I won't throughout the July meeting, but if we have a completion and if we hold it and stuff, if necessary.
You mean schedule the date for the site walk?
Yeah.
Is what you're saying, okay.
Yeah, if we feel like at that July meeting that the site walk is needed, then, and that gives everybody else the opportunity to weigh in as well, as how comfortable they are with the information going forward, what has been done.
That's good.
And if it's not complete, then we won't have the hearing.
If it's not complete, if it's not complete on, or if the information's not available on that date, then yes, we won't even schedule or announce the public hearing.
Okay.
Or if we get into the meeting and we still didn't, something's missing. So,
Yeah, you still will need to determine, the first action will be to determine the completeness
Completeness.
before you can start.
So my understanding is we'll go determination of completeness, public hearing, schedule site walk, go on site walk. Next meeting is a substantive review / vote.
Well, yeah, we'll see how many,
How many, but the substantive review would begin at the July meeting,
Okay. Okay.
is my thought. I mean,
Great.
that's my
Great.
thought, as we start getting into the details,
Great.
we'd hear public comments, and then we would start digging into the details at that meeting.
Great.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure, absolutely.
So George, you said something about the abutter notices and that they may not be correct.
No,
Butter addresses.
so a couple of points. The application says, abutters have not been notified.
Did I not?
It says, you checked off no there, I think.
Missed it by that much.
but they have.
But
we have.
but you did include the notices.
Yep.
So, the subdivision plan, if you check all the abutters, they may or may not be the current owner, because somebody might have bought the property since last April 15th. So there's a new owner.
But the correct abutters were all noticed for this.
They would have been sent to whoever's on the tax.
That list was generated by
tax
the
list.
town.
Okay, well then, that's on us.
But which may also be out of date.
Correct.
So there may be actual abutters that did not receive notice.
Theoretically.
They're required to send it to the last official record based on the town, I believe.
Where is that stated?
Typically, it is in the ordinance.
That's a tough one. I mean,
For that very reason.
because what else do you do?
Do a title search.
Title search on everybody next to you.
You want to add that to the completeness list to make sure that all of the current owners of the abutting properties have been notified?
Well, Well, what standard we're gonna use?
I assume we'll all dig into the ordinance after we leave here and
Per the standard, per the ordinance.
I'll make, yeah.
It's definitely, it's not in the ordinance. It may be in state
The only name
statute.
that's not correct is ours, and we were notified.
There you
My
go.
man.
Yeah. Now, the notice was not correct with the contact information for the town, with the email and
Had
the
Bob in
phone
there.
number, but as far as I know, we were the last people to move in. It's incorrect on the map, but we were notified.
Hmm,
Would that be helpful?
yeah.
Make sure you give the petitioner your name and address before you leave.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we can, just per the ordinance, you know, the correct people per the, I mean, we just have to have a standard,
Yeah.
I think. And
And I
if
think- I
it's
think
title
that-
search or it's whatever the ordinance
Yeah.
says. And anybody who's identified themselves as new to you,
All right, so the next meeting is July 6th, right?
it is. But you have a lot of work to do before that.
Everyone good
I
with
can
that
delegate
date,
most of that.
I guess? No one on vacation?
You're on vacation, Glenn?
Said no one on vacation?
No. My apologies, I thought that was off.
I think that's the bell.
Shut off, damn it.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. You did not have to do that.
We good?
I appreciate it.
Okay.
What didn't we have to do?
Go through it all.
No, I like doing that.
I appreciate that, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yep.
And it was actually pretty quick, quicker
Yeah.
than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.
We did today get a email that is coming back through Mr. Thebarge from the Conservation Commission, so
Cool.
please coordinate with him on that.
Cool.
George, it was really helpful having you do all this pre-work for us.
No, Ann, you don't miss doing that?
I don't miss
Come
doing
on.
that. I don't. I
Very
don't.
helpful.
Well, I
Oh my
would have,
God, John needs me today. This time. I can just show
what
up.
gave it away? The voicemails, email, text?
I was in meetings all day and I'm like, man, who keeps calling me? Thank
Have
you
a good
very
night.
much.
Hey, see you now.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Sorry, I was
Yep.
not more of it.
No, I appreciate you coming on.
But that's why I stepped down his chair, because I am not. Right.
So,
Okay, Devin, you can cut it off.
Kill it.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.